right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another PMsquare Cognos Analytics live stream. I am your host, Ryan Dolley. I'm the Director of Technology at PMsquare, and I'm here to talk to you today about Cognos Analytics 11.1.7 and the new autonomous REST connector that comes with it. So there's actually a lot to cover that we could cover in this topic, and it can get pretty complicated. So let's go through it together today and see where we can get and have a good conversation about what we think this REST connector might enable and how we're going to take advantage of it going forward. So before I get started, can I get, I see people have been saying hello. Nick from London, always good to see you, Nick. Noor, hello. Jordan, Chris, Patrick, good to see you guys. Cogging in from Northern California. I loved that, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, so continue to say hello in the chat. Rick, always good to see you as well. I love seeing our regulars here. And one thing, and I hate to do this, but it's the world we live in nowadays. So I'm going to have to ask you, if you like the content we put on in this channel and you have yet to comment, and subscribe, I'm going to have to ask you to do that right now. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button and ring the bell if you haven't done that yet. To keep this channel growing, we've got a goal. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers here, and I'd like to see us get over that by the end of the year. So the only way we're going to do that is, a lot of you guys keep coming back to this, so we must be doing something right, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button to let us know that you find it valuable. Chad, hello. Mohan, hello. All right. A little bit of housekeeping to cover first, and then we're going to jump into it. Venkat subbed already. Well, I know that, Venkat. Venkat's one of our regulars here. Now, Venkat, I'll have you know, I did move the stream up an hour because I believe last time or the time before you said that it was too late for you over in India. So I moved it up an hour. That's the best I could do. I hope you're happy. So with that said, I'm going to, let's switch over here and get a little housekeeping out of the way before we dive into this REST API connector. Hello from Norway. Poland, all right. In this small non-democratic village in the center of Europe. Well, I'll let that pass without comment. we try not to get into that on these streams. It's starting to get a little cold here in the Detroit area, which means that everything is starting to dry out, including me. Okay, so housekeeping before we launch into it. Upcoming events with PMsquare. So today, if you go to pmsquare.com/events, you're going to see today's live stream, Cognos Analytics and REST APIs. Then coming up on October 8th, we're going to go over the new IBM data modeling best practices. So some of you may know, and for those of you who don't, I can consider this your notice. IBM has released a new data modeling best practices document intended to address both Framework Manager and data modules. So if you go to the IBM support site or the documentation site, you'll find that. It's something that I know people have been asking about a lot. And I mentioned, I think, on the 11.1.7 unboxing live stream that IBM was working on it, but it wasn't quite available yet. And excuse me. And that caused kind of a deluge of people asking me, well, when is it going to be available? Is it available yet? When can I have it? What's in it? All that sort of stuff. So it's out. Feel free to read through it on your own. But what we're going to do is on October 8th, I'm going to go through it kind of piece by piece. I think only in the context of data modules, because frankly, all of our regulars on this chat, I think, know Framework Manager pretty darn well. So I'll go through it in the context of data modules. And of course, we can discuss FM as we go, but I'm not really going to walk through what it says in FM. However, that's what that stream is going to be about. So come prepared with your data modeling questions, and I will show you, we'll walk through what's in the document, but I'll also kind of give you some of my tips and tricks and the things that we've found at PMsquare that are useful. And then coming up October 14th, so every year PMsquare has a conference called Bacon. That's the Business Analytics Conference. We're very clever here at PMsquare, so we made sure to come up with a conference that we could abbreviate to the word Bacon. And this year at Bacon, usually what Bacon is it's a live event. We get around 150 attendees, and It's done at the Arlington racetrack in Arlington, Illinois. It's a 2-day event. We have a great time, and we must be doing something okay because a lot of people keep coming to it, right? Now, the situation in the world being what it is this year, we have decided to make it into a virtual event. It's a free virtual event. So typically it's an event that we charge for. This year it's a free virtual event. It's happening October 14th and October 15th. And it's going to be, I think, a really valuable event that is focused on Cognos and planning analytics, but also a couple other products that we're very excited about here at PMsquare. That would be the Encorta direct data mapping platform and the Trifacta kind of self-service data blending platform. Those are two things that we've invested in that we really want to introduce people to. They're kind of up and coming, startup level solutions that we think are going to really change the way analytics can be done. And so, you know us as Cognos experts, and we are Cognos experts and planning analytics experts, but we invite you to attend that event, not just for Cognos and planning analytics, but also to get exposure to these up and coming pieces of technology that we kind of think overturn the apple cart when it comes to data blending, ETL, and data warehousing. So again, that's a free event. So go to our website. You can actually see it's pmsquare.com/bacon for this year's event to register. And it's a 2-day virtual event that the first day is going to be presentations. So we'll have presentations and demos of the tools that I've mentioned, along with some special messages from, say, the Trifacta CEO, for example. And then on day 2, it's going to be hands-on training. So you'll have the opportunity to do hands-on training with all of the tools I mentioned: Trifacta, Encorta, Cognos Analytics, and Planning Analytics. So it's going to be a great event. We're putting in a lot of work to make sure that it's really valuable content for you, and I encourage you to register and attend. It's free, so I hope to really see you there. So just checking the chat. Hello from Brazil. Yeah, hello to everyone from the Detroit area. Any news on the FM to DM conversion tool? Well, they say no news is good news, right? And so it's still something that we're working on over here. We have a pretty small dev team with a lot of different priorities, and so we're still plugging away. Nick, feel free to shoot me an email if you want to do a trial of that. We can just set something up, or I can get you access to it, and you can give it a test, or we'll hop on a Zoom or something and walk through it with a model of yours and see what it does. I'm happy to do that. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, let's talk about what you're all here for today, which is to talk about REST APIs and Cognos Analytics 11.1.7. Before I launch into this, I want to kind of set the table for what we are going to do today and what we're not going to do today. So there's really 2 REST API topics that we could talk about when it comes to 11.1.7. The first one, and the one that we're going to cover, is the new REST API data server connection. This is for you to connect Cognos to a REST service, pull JSON data from that REST service, but have Cognos interpret it and surface it as if it were a table in a SQL database, right? That's topic 1, and that's going to be what we focus on today. Topic 2, which if there's enough interest, we're happy to do a presentation about as well, is the new Cognos Analytics REST API. So Cognos itself now has a REST API. You may be familiar with the Cognos SDK that we got in, maybe it was a Cognos 8 release, or it must have been a Cognos 8 release. But I couldn't tell you exactly when it came in. It's been a long time. And that SDK, Java SDK, hasn't changed much. The REST API is a new, more modern interface for you to get data out of Cognos about Cognos, and for you to programmatically do things in Cognos. For example, you can programmatically load an Excel spreadsheet into Cognos using the REST API. You can query Cognos for information about reports and get back a JSON payload that contains all of the properties of the report, all of the information about the report, who built it, when was it first created, when was it last updated, and the report spec. That is not what I'm going to be covering today. So I just want to make sure that it's clear what we are going to talk about and what we're not going to talk about. But like, if there's enough interest, and let me know in the chat, would you like to see a live stream about the Cognos REST API and how to get data out of Cognos about Cognos using REST? Just give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat, and we can take it from there. Dark, yeah, is it something new? Yeah, it's something new. So it's not CMS. It's something totally new. It's a new REST API. Everybody wants to see it. Okay. I hope that that's not what you were thinking you were going to see today, because I looked at the title of our presentation, and it was just, yes, REST API, Cognos and REST APIs. What we're going to be talking about is connecting to REST APIs, okay? Postman or anything third party. It's funny you mentioned Postman, because we will be doing some work in Postman today. So the second thing I want to address is that this is really meant to be an introduction to REST APIs for Cognos developers and admins, right? And so what we're going to walk through today is primarily around how to interact with REST APIs and get them into Cognos, right? That's going to be the meat of it. How do I work with a REST API, get data out of a REST API, surface it in Cognos, and what are some of the considerations for connecting Cognos to a REST API, including OAuth 2.0 authorization? That's what we're going to cover. There's going to be a follow-up presentation that's going to go deeper into, okay, now I've connected, I've got data, but the data doesn't quite look the way I want it to look. How can I change that? There's two ways to change it. You know, what you're going to see today is that to Cognos, these REST APIs are going to look like tables. You can pull it into a data module and do the types of stuff that you do to a normal table to the data coming out of REST. So you feel free to model the data all you want there, but you can also make changes in the REST connection itself that are going to change what Cognos is getting back. So we will look a little bit at that today, but we're going to have a follow-up where we dive deeper into that. All right, so with the table set, let's start to talk about REST APIs and Cognos Analytics. So the first thing to understand is really to show you where this comes into play in Cognos, okay? So if we go in to a Cognos environment, and I'm betting you anything this is going to make me log in a second, but let's just, if I go into manage and let's close out of this, I'm going to be very surprised if it doesn't ask me to log in. Okay, so well, it hasn't yet, so we'll keep going. So when you go into manage, okay, the manage menu, and you see your data server connections, you go to add a new data server connection. You're not going to see in here, you know, this is an alphabetical list, and you look at R, and there's nothing there, okay? So the thing to understand about this REST API connector is it is not something that IBM built themselves. It is something that they have acquired from another party, Progress. So Progress is a company I've bumped into a few times over my career when I'm trying to connect to something weird. Like when I worked at Oracle one time, we had to connect to a funky database, and there was the way we were able to do it is Progress had a JDBC connector for that database. Progress's whole thing is making it easy for you to connect your applications to other applications, including REST APIs. So if you look at this, you can see that this database source is actually called Progress Data Direct Autonomous REST Connection. And that is how you're going to connect to a REST API. So the technology that's driving this is from Progress. And as a consequence, when you want to learn things about this, if you look, Google or look up on YouTube, Cognos REST API connector, probably the only thing you're going to find for a while is going to be this video, right? And then the IBM docs. If you want to find YouTube videos about using this, you need to search for Progress Data Direct Autonomous REST, okay? And that is going to show you the Progress videos of them walking through this solution. It was fairly helpful for me once I started doing that, okay? So that's pro tip number one. Now, pro tip number two is going to be, here we go. So I'll punch this into the Slack here, or the Slack. The, you see, you can tell, what do we use to collaborate? I'll punch this into the chat. Everything I'm going to show you today, I gleaned by walking through this 180-page Progress Data Direct Autonomous REST Connector for JDBC user guide for partners. So this is a pretty dense document. It does go through everything you need to know, but there's a lot to it, and it's not a smooth read. Let me put it that way. There is no, intro, where they walk you through step-by-step how to connect to an example API that they provide, right? You're going to have to stumble around with this a lot like I did. And the final thing I will put out there is, I'm a data warehouse BI SQL guy. When I started working on this a couple weeks ago, I honestly knew next to nothing about REST APIs and connecting to them. So I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who does not have a sophisticated past interacting with APIs. I do run a dev team, and when I need some API stuff, I have the dev guys do it. But I decided I needed to learn this, and this was a great opportunity for me to do it. I'm curious in the chat, let me know, are you experienced when it comes to working with REST APIs, or are you a noob like me? And that might help me tailor a little bit of this presentation. But with all the groundwork laid there, we're going to dive into, how do I actually find a REST API and connect to it? Noob here. Yeah, Francis, I'm such a noob. Okay, well, I'll proceed for the noobs. And if you're really experienced, maybe you can help provide some feedback in the chat. So to start with, the API that we're going to work with is the pokeapi.co. So if you go to, and I will walk you guys through this. I will walk you guys through this from the perspective of a total noob who needs to interact with a REST API. And I chose one that, at least to me, is fun because I'm a huge gamer nerd. Although I don't really play Pokemon games, they kind of came out a little after my time, but all the same, I know a little bit about it. And is publicly available. So the Poke API, the pokeapi.co, will give you, is the first API that we're going to look at. And then we're going to look at an actual enterprise API that you guys might interact with that requires some enterprise authentication. Okay, so pokeapi.co, I see there's a couple questions here. Is it possible with REST service to answer the question if some database field is used in some reports in Cognos and which ones? So, Rayo, I haven't looked super deep into it. I do think that, and it might be a little challenging, but given that the report spec is available in the Cognos REST API, you can see what fields are used in the report spec, and you can trace that back to the data sources that are involved. And then you can look at the data sources and ask, what database is this data source connected to, right? That is probably your best bet for doing that. It's not a simple request. There's not an API for it. And what I would suggest is that we're going to add that into Thrive now that we have this REST API to let you know, for those of you who are familiar with Thrive or who aren't, Thrive is our product that helps you answer those types of questions. Who's doing what in Cognos? What's going on with our security? What reports are in use? What can we archive? That sort of stuff. And one of the things we're going to add to it is the ability to, we're going to try to figure all this out. We're switching Thrive over to use this new REST API and get off of what we were doing, which was either querying the content store directly via SQL or looking at using the SDK. So I'm going to try to figure all that out, and then you won't have to. That's how to answer that question. And then the other question was, I saw earlier in the chat, can I use the REST API to embed Cognos content in something else? The answer to that is yes, but the asterisk I'll put on it is, I know that that's technically possible. I haven't done it at all yet, so I can't really tell you how well it works and what the constraints that might exist are. I just know that it is an option. So okay, Poke API, Darek, yes, been there, done that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is when when you determine you want to connect to a REST API is what I've found is every REST API is like its own beast. It's got its own constraints. It's got its own things you need to know about how to connect to it, how to authenticate it, how to request specific pieces of information. However, the base of a REST API is about finding a URL endpoint, right? So you're going to put some URL into whatever you're using, whether it's Postman or Cognos or anything like that. And then you're going to append to it various parameters or headers in order to do things like authenticate or provide it instructions for what type of data you want to get back or in what format the data needs to arrive in, right? So if you go to the Poke API, you can see here where they give you, and one of the reasons I chose this is they make it very clear. They give you the URL along with what comes after. This part of the URL that they don't let you change here is the fixed part. It's going to be the same in every request. And then what comes after it is going to determine what it is that you get, right? So, and you can see the information that it gets. So if you click submit here, it will give you, right, these Pokemon. So if you were to punch this into your browser, this is literally what you would get in your browser if you went to this website, okay? Well, let's say I'm interested in a specific Pokemon like Ditto, right? I put in this URL, now I get this JSON payload back for information about Ditto. So it includes what are Ditto's abilities, what forms can Ditto take, what games is Ditto in, what moves can Ditto do, what are Ditto's stats. It has links to the actual sprites for Ditto that have been used in various games. So lots of stuff there, okay? Now, so I would encourage you, if you want to kind of follow along now or later, to come here and mess around with this. You can also check out the documentation, and most good REST APIs have good documentation, right? So you can see in here that there are, it walks you through how to use all of these REST APIs. So like you want to get information about the berries that are available to give to Pokemon in the Pokemon games. There's an API endpoint for that. It's the berries endpoint, right? And they show you here the get request, get. In the Midwest, we say get with an I. Everybody else says get with an E. It's part of my accent, I guess. The get request that you would put into your whatever tool you're using to get this, right? So one thing that I do, and I'm going to show you the first thing I do. So I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, I want to mess around with this. I want to get Pokemon data into Cognos. I'm not going to go straight to Cognos and punch it in. I'm going to use a tool called Postman. Postman is a tool that it's free, and it's great for figuring out how to interact with a REST API. So you can see here I have a project called Pokemon. I've already got a couple GET requests in here. And if you want to look at one of the GET requests, so say get Pokemon, I'll show you. We can pull that URL from the Pokemon website. So we're going to say, get and then go to this URL. And when I click send, it returns JSON. This JSON payload that is a list of Pokemon, right? Greta. Oh, Greta, I didn't know you were here. It was so good to see you. For those of you who don't know, Greta Brower is one of our dearly departed colleagues here at PMsquare. We miss her very much. Nice. I'm glad you could tune in, Greta, and we'll catch up soon. Okay, so here you can see, right, this is the reply that I get when I look at Pokemon. Now, if I wanted to do so, one thing you'll notice is that this returns, if you look at this, the first thing it says is count 1050, so there's 1050 Pokemon. However, there's only 20 returned. Why is there only 20 returned? Because the Pokemon API, and these are the types of things you just kind of figure out by messing around or looking at documentation. The Pokemon API If you just say, give me the Pokemon or give me almost anything, it will limit the amount of data it returns to you, right? So let's say you say, no, I want a list of all the Pokemon, okay? Well, what I'm going to do in Postman is I'm going to provide some query params. So I'm going to say, provide a query param called limit. And the value I'm going to send along with that is 2000. So I'm going to say, I want you to give me a list of Pokemon, and I want the limit to not be 20. I want it to be 2000. And if you look here, you can see that what it actually did is it changed the URL. Right? So now the URL is Pokemon question mark, which is the way that you tell a REST service, hey, I'm giving you params. And then the param is limit equals 2000. If we wanted to add another param, we would put an and symbol in here. And you can see as soon as I put the and symbol in, it created a new line in Postman. So this is what's so great about Postman and why I suggest that you use it to explore APIs rather than just try to shoehorn these URLs into the Cognos JDBC connector, because Cognos, the JDBC connector doesn't always give incredible, actually the errors for it are pretty good because they're coming from Progress rather than IBM. It's like this, you're just going to get an error code, whereas this is very interactive. And it's very easy to use, I find, right? So when I set this to limit 2000 and click send, you're going to see now I've got a much bigger list of Pokemon. So I've got all 2000 Pokemon, okay? So the first step, just to recap what we've done so far before we jump into Cognos, the first step is to go to the REST API that you're interested in, go to their website, look at their documentation, and see, do they have, like they do on the Pokemon REST API here, do they have a thing that allows you to try it? A lot of REST APIs do. I looked at, so things that I've messed around with, Google Analytics API, which I wanted to demo today, but in order to get access to the Google Analytics API, you have to submit a request that requires a formal human review, which takes 4 to 6 weeks, which of course I tried, 3 days ago. So I wasn't able to share that today, but maybe at some point in the future, I'll show you how to connect to Google Analytics because I know people ask it to me a lot. You come here, you try it out, you mess around with it on the site of the company or API that you're trying to connect to. Next step, take what you learned here, put it into Postman. Figure out what are the params I can pass to get the data that I want, right? Next thing that you do is you want to go to now, okay, let's say now I want to get a list of all of the Pokemon into Cognos. All right, let's do it. You can literally take this, copy it, go into Cognos. So here's that new data server connection that we were connecting to. And what you're going to want to do is where you see, so you can see here, these you're not going to change. JDBC : IBM Cognos : AutoRest : You're not going to mess with that. The most basic thing to understand here is there's 2 ways for this connector to connect to a REST API. The first way is called the sample method, okay? The sample method is like an automatic conversion of the JSON payload into a table structure. It works pretty darn well. So that's when you're going to say, I'm not going to define anything outside of this connection string. I'm going to, and I want the autonomous REST connector to do its thing and figure out what this is supposed to look like. I think that's where the autonomous part of AutoRest comes into play, is it can figure out, it can on its own figure out, okay, this is the structure of a JSON. Here's how it would look like if it were a table. That's what we're calling the sample method. So what that's going to be is sample equals, okay, and then quote, close quote, semicolon. And now we're going to click the test button, and we're going to see, does this work? Success, okay? So this is able to connect to this API and return data. The other option, which I will show you in a second, is that instead of putting sample in here, you put config in here. And instead of having a URL here, you actually have a path to a file on the Cognos server, okay? And that file is a configuration file that tells you how to, that provides data like what URLs are we connecting to, what tables should those URLs be mapped to, what should the table structure of that table mapping look like, okay? That's the more advanced way to do it. But the basic way, which I've had decent success with, is using this sample method. So we're going to rename this, and we'll call this, say, the Pokemon connector, okay? We'll save this, and we're going to go ahead and see what this looks like in a data module. Nick asks, do you have to hard code parameters in the URL? I'd like to pass the params in my report rather than the data connection. So I don't know if that's possible or not. I haven't tried. Based on my experience so far, I feel like that would be challenging to do, but I'm not going to say it's not possible, especially since I work with Cognos Paul Mendelson. Whenever I say something's not possible, Cognos Paul just views it as a challenge and figures it out. So I'm going to say it's not possible, which means it is, and Paul will let you know how to do it next week. Yeah, hold my beer. Exactly. Exactly, Derek. Okay, so what does this look like? Now, this is basic again, but I need to keep this basic once for one reason, so that everybody can follow it, including myself. Because like I said, I'm not a world-beating expert in this. I'm learning alongside you guys. So let's make a new data module, and we'll go ahead and look at our sources. And here we're going to see a source called Pokemon. Oh, I forgot a crucial step. You need to load, of course, like you do with any database or data server. You need to actually load the schemas. So you're going to see a bunch of schemas here. I honestly am not sure what these do, but they don't appear to be apparently. They're not immediately. It's not immediately apparent how they're useful. The auto rest one is the one you want to load. So the auto rest schema is going to load, and you'll see it's got 3 of 3 tables loaded. And if we want to, we can take a peek at what those tables are, right? The results table, the API v2 Pokemon table, and a config table. So now we'll close out of here and build our data module. So data servers, Pokemon, auto rest. Okay. It's now from this point forward, it's identical to building this off of a SQL database. The difference is going to be, when you come in here, you can see these tables. So we've got this table kind of tells us some information that came in with the REST API. And then the results table gives us our list of Pokemon. So here's every Pokemon and the position number of that Pokemon in the Poke API and a URL to that specific Pokemon's data, right? So that's kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and save this. And we will call this, save it into my folders, into REST APIs, and let's call this, just call this Pokemon. So we'll save it. And now let's see what a slightly more advanced API might look like in here. We're still going to pull it from the Pokemon API. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a new connection. Again, we're going to use the Data Direct Autonomous REST. We'll go ahead and the one thing I highly recommend is the second you come in here, give it a name. Because you can get into weird situations where you didn't name it and like you lose your data server connection and all of that. So let's call this individual Pokemon. And Nick, what I'm going to show you right here is a perfect example of what you're talking about and something I've looked into a little bit but haven't been able to figure out yet, which I'm trying to, is how can I make this a dynamic thing? And the reason you might want to do that is, let me show you we're going to grab another Pokemon here. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this whole JDBC string. And what I'm going to tell this instead, you're going to see the UI and the data connection admin is brutal. What can I say? I don't think it's too big a deal for me to say. I have seen like very rough designs on what a new version of this might look like. And that's all I know, right? So I know they're thinking about it, Nick, but where it is in terms of design, and that there is some degree of design work done on it, where it is in terms of design priorities and dev priorities, I don't know, but IBM's aware that this UI needs an overhaul, and they have done at least some work on it. Okay, so let's look at this, right? This time we're telling it we want a specific Pokemon, okay? Let's change this to 5 because I think that's a Pokemon I may have heard of. Okay, now, again, we'll test it. Success, great. When you have success, you need to save this. Darek is looking at it. Yes, so it does support a lot of SQL syntax. And that's something when I said, we're going to have the connecting live stream and then the more advanced live stream. That's going to be the next live stream, Darek, because I haven't been able to really dive into that to be able to show you guys all of the options that are available in that SQL syntax. But there is a lot of stuff in there. So let's go ahead and load metadata for this Pokemon and kind of show you. Now, let's look at, we'll do the same thing here. Maybe let's change this to reflect Pokemon/5, okay? And send our GET request. And now you can see what we get back is a much bigger thing. It's not just a list of Pokemon, it's all of the specific attributes of the Pokemon at position number 5 that we asked for. So here's what it looks like in JSON. Okay? Here's what it looks like in JSON. Now, what is this going to look like in Cognos? Here's Cognos. Okay. Now you see it loaded 9 tables. So it translated that JSON into 9 tables. And let's go ahead and add this into our Pokemon. Let's go ahead and add this into our Pokemon. Let's add new sources, and we'll go Pokemon. Now it's going to ask me which data source do I want. This time I'll choose individual Pokemon, and we'll do the same thing. We're just going to add everything into this. We'll choose everything. Okay. Now we might have a conflict with the... So here, if we look at the relationships, you can see, I love how messy this is. But you can see for this individual Pokemon, who in this case is, who is this? Charmeleon, right? A Pokemon one of the like 20 Pokemon I recognize. I've got this model built now for Charmeleon and everything associated with Charmeleon. What forms does Charmeleon take? What games is Charmeleon in, right? What moves does Charmeleon have available to him or her? Charmeleon's stats, the various types of, like what type of Pokemon is Charmeleon? Yeah, Darek. I'm glad. Darek, did you look at this document at all before today? For those, Darek's providing very helpful commentary in the chat. Yeah. Have you messed around? Yes. No. Okay. Yeah, it's real. The documentation is extraordinarily thorough. It's just I found it a little hard to follow, in part because it's so thorough. So, and it doesn't provide like a very clear, there's not a section that's like, here it is for dummies, which would have helped me because of my total noobishness to the world of REST APIs. So let's go ahead and say this Pokemon example here. So, okay. So the final thing that I would show, and we'll add another one in here, and it's going to return a very similar a similar set of data, but it's going to be a little different, is related to using that REST file. So we're going to look at using this REST file, and then we're going to look at OAuth 2.0 authentication to Clickup, which is a Trello-like piece of software that we use at PMsquare. And then we'll take questions about whatever, this process or Cognos in general after that. So we've been using the sample method so far. What does it look like to actually use a REST file? Okay, here I have an example of a REST file. So what this is doing, and this is a very basic one, it's not doing the type of stuff that Darek is talking about where you're providing SQL and that sort of stuff. Although if you were doing that, here's where you would do it. So this is an actual file, Pokemon_tables.rest. It's in the C directory, so it's easy to find on our Cognos server. And you can see here, I've got two tables I'm pulling, okay? One is the abilities table, or I'm using the abilities API. It's going to come in as a table called abilities, right? Paul signing off. Paul Hoffman, thank you for joining. I'm glad you could come, and I hope you and the family are doing well. And say hi to everybody in Madison for me. I really miss you guys terribly, and I miss Madison. It's a great place. So yeah, so we're going to get two tables out of this. We're going to get a table called abilities that lists all the abilities in the game, and then we're going to get a table called Pokemon, lists all the Pokemon in the game. And here's an example of some params that I'm passing in, not via the URL in the connection string, but via this file, okay? So what does that look like, and how do I do it? Well, I'm going to go in, and we're going to look at our Pokemon connection again. We're going to add a new connection. Again, the REST API, progress data direct, okay? And this time, we're going to provide the property. Right? What we're going to put in here is simple. And we're going to get into a much more complex connection string. But here you can see, okay, this is just, instead of having sample here, I have config. So I'm telling the data direct connector not to like sample what it finds and build its own, build whatever it thinks is best. But I'm telling it, go to this file, Pokemon_tables.rest, and follow my instructions when it comes to building out the table-like structure that you're going to build out of this REST API, okay? So let's test that guy. Success, great. I don't follow my own instructions. Okay, we'll call this, maybe we'll call this all Pokemon and abilities, something like that. I don't know. And now we can save it. Once we save it, then we can run the schema discovery. We'll load the metadata, let Cognos do its metadata thing. Five of 5 tables loaded. Great. Let's close out of here and add that into our Pokemon module as well. In fact, that that may conflict. Is that going to conflict with anything I have here? I suspect it will. I'm just going to build a brand new data module just for to make sure that we don't have funky data module issues that are utterly unrelated to our connection. So let's go ahead and pull in the Pokemon connector. We'll choose all Pokemon and abilities. Okay. Okay. Select the tables, give me all of them. Okay. And now here you can see, here are the relationships that I have, right? The Pokemon that I have built in. And here's a table with, which one is it? This results table has all Pokemon. The results 1 table has, or rather this one has all moves. Sorry, the results table has all the moves. The results 1 table has all the Pokemon. And now I can go about, doing my data modeling tasks and treat it like a table. Now, some considerations for what you're going to want to do here. It is my opinion, and I talked to IBM about this, and they agree that really the best thing to do here is to build data sets off of these. Do not rely directly on the API connector when you are like for production purposes. It's not that you can't. It's not, but it's that there are a lot of performance considerations and performance tuning, like what Dark's talking about in the chat. You know, it's very complex, the things that can affect performance of this autonomous REST connector interacting with the REST APIs, right? And there are limiters. A lot of REST APIs are going to have limiters on how many GET requests can you make in an hour? How big are the payloads that can be sent to you? That sort of stuff, right? So what I would suggest you do is you build it so that you make a single scheduled GET request to pull the data and load a data set. That way all your users are hitting the data set rather than you issuing a large number of GET requests as people use dashboards and that sort of stuff. I'm going to go out on a limb. And again, I haven't extensively used this in a production capacity. It's brand new, and we're all in the same boat. Although I have talked to IBM, and I do know for certain that they have customers that are using this in a production capacity. Very large banking customer, for example, that they worked with to iron out a lot of these kinks. So there are people using this in prod, but not widely yet. But I'm gonna say right now that the best practice in most situations is going to wind up being build data sets off of this. So I'll throw that out there before we move on to OAuth 2.0 I really do believe that that's what we're going to wind up doing. Okay. I'll pause there. If there are any additional questions before we move on to OAuth 2.0, this is your time. I'm also going to take a drink of water because I've been talking for 50 straight minutes. Okay. I don't see anything in the chat, so on we go. Let's talk about connecting to Clickup. Okay, so like I said, Clickup is an application that is is like Trello or Jira, right? But it does more than that. It's kind of like if you took 4 or 5 productivity apps and put them all in one. And that's why we like it so much and use it so much here at PMsquare. So, excuse me, that's a little plug for what is so good about this. So if I figured out how to connect to this last night. Venkat, if you want me to just paste the URL that you want me to try to use into the chat, and we can take a look at it at the end of our session. Just remind me. Okay. So I had no idea how to connect to Clickup like at this time yesterday, but I knew I wanted to, and so I started digging around, looking at the authentication, and what our options were, and that there's a personal token in OAuth 2, and I wanted to show you OAuth 2, right? And this again is brand new to me, kind of funky. So let's take a look at how to do this. Okay, so if you read through this, it says first you need to create an OAuth app within Clickup itself. Okay, so I'm going to walk through with you how I did this. Here's one I created yesterday, but I'm going to create a new one just to show you this process. So I'm going to create an app, and we'll call this Cognos Data Access 2. It asks you to provide a redirect URL. I'll call this PMsquare Ryan. Now, don't think you can get cute and use these in the future because I'm going to delete these immediately after the stream so none of you can access our stuff. Okay, now it's going to give you a client ID and a client secret. Okay, this is something that you need to keep track of. So I'm going to pop open, actually I won't use that. I'll just, client ID and client secret. And this is standard for OAuth 2, that you're going to need to grab these things and use them for authentication. Okay, client ID and client secret. Now, if you follow these instructions, it says, okay, now you're going to need to get an authorization code. All right, let's get an authorization code. How do we do that? Well, we need to go to a URL, okay? And that URL needs to have the format of client ID equals client ID. Okay, well, that's what we have here. All right, so let's paste that in. And you'll notice that this is a REST endpoint, right? Client ID equals this, and the redirect URI. The redirect URI is that thing that I just defined. So I believe that was PMsquare Ryan, but let's just take a look. PMsquare Ryan, yes. Okay, PMsquare Ryan. And it says, okay, go to this website. Cool. So I went to this website, and it says, okay, what you got to select workspaces to associate with this authentication token, okay? Let's associate both of these workspaces to the authentication token. What redirect URI does not match. Okay. PMsquare Ryan. This actually happened. PMsquare Ryan. Can I just do PMsquare? Can I just do Ryan? No. That's strange, but that's okay. We'll just change it to something else. Let's call it let's see. Unfortunately I'm a Detroit Lions fan. So let's change it to Go Lions and quick save. And here we'll put in redirect URI Go Lions. Try to go into that. Authorize these two. Connect. Client not found. Client ID, did it change? No, the client ID is correct. Yep. No, it's not. Okay. I'll mess around with this for another minute or two, and if I can't get it to work, then we will we'll just go to the pre-configured one I have. Okay, it looks like it's going to happen. Okay, so then I got to this site, and this was totally baffling to me. I was like, oh, something's busted. Well, it turns out that actually it's giving me the code that I need right here. Okay, so these are the types of things you need to navigate your way around in order to figure out how to get connected to OAuth. And this took me a little while. It took me a little while to notice that. Like, oh, it's embedded in the actual response that came in the browser, up here in the browser. All right, so, well, that's cool. Now okay, now I got that code. Now I'm good to go, right? I can connect. No, there's a final step. So if we look at the steps here, okay, after I have the authorization code, I need an access token. How do I get the access token? I need to send a post request to this location with these params in order to get the access token. Okay, cool. Let's do that. All right, let's jump into Postman and go to Clickup authorization. And here you can see, now they said I need to make a post request. So I'll do a post request, and it needs to go to this URL, right? So it's, now this took me a second to figure out as well. And what this ended up being, and how did I find it? I found this by looking at, let me look at their, yeah, it was, so they provide this, but they don't tell you anything else, right? It's like /API v2 OAuth token. Well, what am I supposed to put in there? Like, what comes before that? The answer, if I remember correctly, was, it was what? API. Where's Postman? It was API. Yeah, it's this one right here. So, right, so OAuth /token, okay? And then the instructions said, well, you need the following keys. So we're going to have to put the keys in, okay? So it's client ID, client secret, and code. So let's go back to Postman and put in client ID, client secret, and code. And we got code here, and those were the items that, you know, I've generated so far that we've taken a look at. So let's just grab those. Client ID, client secret, code. All right, now let's try sending this and see what we get back. We did not get what we wanted. Why did we not get what we wanted? Oh, because I named these wrong. These need underscores in them. So client underscore ID, client underscore secret. Still didn't get what we wanted, which is fine. We'll just move on since I already saved one of these. So what this does is it gives you the access token, okay? And that's what you need to write down. The authorization token is what you need to write down in order to connect to this, right? Okay, so once you get that authorization token will give you access to the items that you approved by going through this process. I don't know why it's not working right now. I'm sure it's some little syntax thing that I'm not noticing, but I have the one from last night. So let's pretend we got the authorization token there. How am I going to connect to that? The way I'm going to connect to that is I'm going to go into, we'll go ahead and build a new, connector here. We'll call this one, say, Clickup. And we're going to have to put in some different types of things into this this connection string, okay? So let's drop this in here, and I'll talk you through what this is doing. So the first thing is this particular API requires that an authorization token be sent in the header, okay? The way you tell that to this is you can see I have this authentication method equals HTTP header. I have that here. And then I provide the authentication token that I got, okay? And then I utilize the sample methodology to pull back information about spaces in Clickup. So this is just an example. Let's go ahead and test this. Success, save it. Now I can load my schemas and all that. Okay, so this is just an example I wanted to show you of how to actually connect. This is a very common way that APIs are authenticated using OAuth 2. I wanted to show you an example of how to connect to that, get the data you need to pull that into Cognos, okay? So if you see here, I'll load metadata, and it should come back, and I think it's going to give me 2 tables or something like that. And you know, we won't go into what's in there because I've been going for an hour already, but that's an example of how to do it. Now, are you going to be able to do it exactly that way with the OAuth 2 application that you want to connect to? The answer is going to be no. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at their documentation. How do you get these elements from them to connect on to OAuth 2? And you know, and it's going to be different. It's not going to be the exact process that you saw here, me connecting to Clickup. But it is going to have elements like a process you need to go through to get the authorization token, right? Once you get the authorization token, there's going to be a way that you need to send it to them. You're probably going to have to post it to them or else put it in an HTTP header or something like that. These are the types of things that, in a more enterprise sense, you're going to have to go through. So what have we talked about today? We've gone through, since a lot of us are total noobs to REST APIs and we don't know anything about this, what are the tools of the trade? The tools of the trade in my mind are your web browser, Postman, and your ability to sift through documentation. Those are the 3 key things you're going to need to learn. You're going to need to bring with you to explore REST APIs that you might want to pull data into. The next thing you're going to need to look at for sure and wrap your head around is this spreadsheet, okay? Spreadsheet. This PDF is the key to unlocking the basic stuff I've shown you today and the advanced stuff that Dark has been talking about that he sees in this document, because there is very advanced stuff in this document where you can map very individual pieces of that JSON payload that's coming back to specific tables or fields that you want structured in your data module, right, or in Cognos. And then the final thing is that you're going to need to really play with is the structure of this, the structure of the connection details, right? In combination with the structure of the REST file that I showed you earlier. That is what's going to determine how you connect, what is sent when you connect, like when you first make your connect, if you need to post first in order to connect to get an authorization token, and then make requests. All of that is governed by this connection string and what you see here, okay? Those are the parameters that we have to work with that I wanted to make everyone available so that, everyone can start playing around. Now, the more advanced stuff, I think we're going to show you in a follow-up stream, probably after Darek teaches me how to do it all. Yeah, so I'll pause there for questions. Darek, I see you asking, is the data cached and what is the eviction period? I will be honest, I don't actually know, right? And if you were to go into, so all the caching options to my knowledge exist. Like if we look in here, if we look in here and look at the, it's like I have caching options when I look at these tables, I believe, right? So I can set a data cache here. My assumption, right? My assumption is that, Cognos is treating this like all of this is going through the query service, and the query service cache still applies. Now, have I actually done a QFS trace to really look at what it's doing and make sure that's happening? I haven't. And when it comes to session macros and the connection events, I haven't messed around with that either. So I'll have to profess my ignorance to your very good questions. Yeah, I think, these are all things that we're going to want to look at in a follow-up stream. In fact, I'm going to make sure that I look at these questions after the fact, after our stream, and write them down to make sure that we'll do a stream where we do answer all this type of stuff, because these are great questions. Okay. There was a request from Venkat, I think, to punch URL into this just to see what it does, like a Wikipedia URL. So let's go to, let's look at my beleaguered Detroit Lions. Grab this and have a look at what comes back. And I offer no warranty on what I'm about to do here. I have never done it. I don't know what it's going to do, but Venkat asked me to do it, so we're going to do it. All right. So let's go sample. It's actually sample equals. All right. And can't forget that. Let's test that bad boy. Success. All right. We'll call this Detroit Lions, save it. Let's harvest the schema. And see what we get here. Yeah, a guest spot. I'd absolutely have Dark on a guest spot. Build new data module. And what did we call that? Detroit Lions, I believe. There they are. Unfortunately. For those of you overseas who don't follow professional American football, the Detroit Lions are just an abysmal team. that unfortunately I have the ignoble duty to support. Yeah, so I mean, there's like definitely data in here. Invite Paul and Pascal and have a panel. Absolutely. I mean, I would absolutely set that up. Right. So here's a list of things about the Lions, right? So here's the owner, the president, the head coach. Here's my favorite line. Are you ready? Championships, null. That's all you need to know. Championships, null. Okay. Detroit Lions Hall of Fame players. Now, come on, that's not fair. They have Hall of Fame players. There we go. Lem Barney, Jack Christian. So you can see the structure here is not ideal. But this is where you could come into play, where you would do things in the, you could do things in the, in both the REST config file to get a better structure, or you could mess around here with it, right? Some of the things I'm seeing here might be a little hard to solve in data modules, but, you know, solvable one way or the other. So, yeah, so that's pretty cool. Params in the URL like we could with XML data sources. I don't know, Paul. Give it a shot. Goal instead of null, and that's another game. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so that encompasses really what I have to show today. So I want to thank everybody for coming. A reminder again, before I sign off, of what to do. Subscribe, absolutely. Click the bell. You know you're a real YouTuber when you're constantly imploring people to do that. What do they always say? You got to smash the like button. Hey everybody, smash the like button. Okay, and Bacon. I'll plug it again. A free event. Feel free to sign up. I will be doing a couple presentations there. Randy Dawson, who I know some of you know from PMsquare, will be presenting there. There's a question about custom controls. Just the words custom controls. Yes, the answer is Paul Mendelson. See, everybody knows. I didn't even have to tell you. Check out Bacon. I look forward to seeing you all there. There's going to be a lot of great presentations that I think will open your eyes both to some of what's possible with Cognos, and then also some of these other tools that we think you'll be very interested in. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me. I love being connected to people. I like to see what's going on in your careers. And I know lots of you do reach out to me on LinkedIn from time to time to see, what's going on, or share with me something cool that you were able to accomplish with Cognos. I absolutely love that. So please do. And then otherwise, stay in touch with us at PMsquare.com. And thank you for attending another PMsquare live stream. I look forward to seeing you on the next one on October 8th that will cover IBM data modeling best practices. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Stay safe, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you here again in the future. Ciao.